With his open border policy, Joe Biden has repeatedly stabbed African-American voters in the back, including by granting millions and millions of work permits, taking their jobs. The African-American community, the Hispanic community are going to be the ones that suffer the most. And you know who else? Unions. Because unions are getting good, solid, high pay. And guess what's going to happen? Those unions are going to go out of business because people owning trucking companies and carpenters and people that employ electricians and a lot of trades, they're not going to be able to do this. They're not going to be able to do it. The unions are going to go out. The Teamsters are in trouble. I'm dealing with the Teamsters. They should endorse me. I don't know if they will or not. I know the Teamsters are going to vote for me. The Teamsters, the Teamsters that do the work. The head Teamsters, Sean and everybody, they're good men. They're good people. And I hope they're going to endorse Trump. I think it would be nice. It's been many decades before that's happened. But if you look at the United Auto Workers, what they've done to their people is horrible. They want to do this all-electric nonsense where the cars don't go far, they cost too much, and they're all made in China. And the head of the United Auto Workers never probably shook hands with a Republican before. They're destroying. You know, Mexico has taken, over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it. Went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine, all he does is build car manufacturing plants. He's the biggest in the world. I mean, honestly, I joke about it. He can't walk across the street. In that way, he's like Biden. But for building a plant, he can do the greatest plants in the world, right? That's all he cares about. I said, I'd like to see one of your plants recently. I said, I'd like to see, where can we go? Well, we have to travel to Mexico. I said, why Mexico? He said, because that's where the big plants are building. China's building really big plants in Mexico, and Mexico's building. What about here? Well, we're building much smaller plants here. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? So what they're saying, Jim Jordan, is that we're going to make cars in Mexico, and they're going to do. You're not going to stand for that, Bernie? JD, I have a feeling JD's not big into that policy. 100% tariff. They won't sell any cars over here. And I'll tell them, if they want to build a plant in Michigan, in Ohio, in South Carolina, they can, using American workers. They can. They can't send Chinese workers over here, which they sometimes do. But if they want to do that, we're welcome, right? But they're not going to build them in Mexico, and they're not going to do that. We're going to tariff them at 100%, just like I've done. I saved the steel industry. The people that like me the most are the steel companies. But now I've been out for a little while, and guess what? United States Steel, 50 years, 60 years ago, maybe the greatest company in the world, was just sold to Japan. How do you like that? U.S. Steel, owned and controlled by Japan. I wouldn't have allowed it to happen. Hopefully they won't allow it to happen. When I'm president, we will end this Biden betrayal of the African-American community. We will stop the theft of American jobs and protesting and all of the things. We have to protest. We have no choice. Today, people that protest get arrested in this country. We never had that before. They can rip down Portland. They can rip down Minneapolis, and they can do whatever the hell they want, and nothing happens. If a Republican or a Christian, frankly, and what's happening with the Catholics? The Catholics are under siege. Any Catholic that votes for this numbskull is crazy, because you are being persecuted. You are being, now I'm being persecuted, I think, more than anybody, but who the hell knows? You know, all my life, you've heard of Andrew Jackson. He was actually a great general and a very good president. They say that he was persecuted as president more than anybody else. Second was Abraham Lincoln. This is just what they said. This is in the history books. They were brutal. Andrew Jackson's wife actually died over it, they say. Died of a broken heart, but she died over it. He was never quite the same. But they say Andrew Jackson. They say Abraham Lincoln was second, but he had a, you know, in all fairness, he did have a civil war, so you would think that would cause a problem, right? So you could understand it. But nobody comes close to Trump. And now even the wonderful historians, the fake historians they have in CNN, you ever see these guys? Biden makes a State of the Union speech, one of the worst speeches anybody here has ever heard. And at CNN, they said that was one of the greatest speeches I've ever heard. That was one of the great, MSNBC, a bunch of fakes. They go, that was one of the greatest speeches I've ever heard. You know that CNN turned off, when, here we are, we campaigned for a year, and I obliterate my competition, you know. And they said, sir, please, don't talk about these people that way. They're Republicans. I said, I don't give a shit. They're terrible. I said, I don't care. No, my highly paid advisor, sir, you shouldn't talk to them about that. One of the people said, they said, are you going to run against the president? He said, I have no comment. To me, that meant he's running. So I hit him hard. I hit him low. I hit him high, just like we did to ISIS. We hit him hard. We hit him low. We hit him high. We hit him in the middle. We hit him from on top, and we even came under the ground. We hit this guy so hard, by the time he announced, nobody knew what the hell happened. They said, what happened to him? He's a shell of the man. But we had other people, too. We have to hit hard. And the reason we have to hit hard is we have to win. We have to hit our enemies hard. We have to hit them and treat them with respect. But if they don't treat us with respect, we have to do things because our country's in trouble. We don't have the same country that we had 3 years ago. We were energy independent 3 years ago. Today, we're begging Venezuela for oil. Think of it. We're begging Venezuela for oil. And we're not going to stand for it. We're going to turn this around, and we're going to turn it around fast. Somebody said, we really like this person or that person because they can serve for 8 years. They can serve. I said, if it takes you more than a year to fix the problem, you have the wrong people. That was actually something. That was a political attack line, JD. They said, he could be here for 8 years. I said, if it takes you more than a year, you got the wrong guy. I said, if it takes you 8 years to set this thing up, you don't want to vote for him. So that's the story. It's my first term, and we built the greatest economy. Think of it. In my first term, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. We had the highest tax cut ever. Ronald Reagan didn't do anything even by comparison. We had the biggest regulation cuts and rising wages for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. And we had a thing called no inflation. How do you like the idea of no inflation? Under Biden, the cost of rent is up 30%. Groceries are up 30%. Everything is up. Chicken's up. Bread is up. And I can't read this damn teleprompter. This sucker is moving around. It's like reading a moving flag at a 35-mile-an-hour wind. And then they say Trump's a bad guy, because I'll say this. Don't pay the teleprompter company. Don't pay. Don't pay. And then he'll say, Trump didn't pay me. And they'll say, oh, Trump's a horrible human being. He's terrible. They gave me a pile of crap that this is the craziest thing. And look at all the television I have up there. I got all the television, and they won't say that. They'll say, Trump made a speech. It wasn't so good. It wasn't so good. You know, it's funny. I was asking Jim Jordan about it because he was commenting that we have the largest crowds in the history of politics. Nobody comes close. If Ronald Reagan came to a place called Dayton, Ohio, have you heard of it? If he came to Dayton, Ohio, Honestly, JD, if he had 300 or 400 people in a ballroom, that would be great. We get 25, 30,000 people for a small rally is 20,000 people. We had 88,000 people show up in South Carolina. There was no venue. So we used the whole town. You read it? We used the whole town. The whole town was flooded, and it was unbelievable.